thinking. All right. Hi, everybody. We are live. Hello, hello. Hi, Megan.
Hey,
hi, Caryn.
Hey, Caryn.
So, thanks for joining. Yep. Yeah, we're getting a little feedback there. We're going to figure out how to check on all the chat information, but thanks for coming. My camera's here, but I have my big screen and the two of you kind of up a little more at eye level. So I'm going to probably be looking like I'm looking up in the ceiling, but you know.
That's okay.
So I thought tonight we could talk about, because both of you have traveled recently, some more recently than others, from Wisconsin, southern Wisconsin, to one of the coasts. Megan, you went to California, 5-day trip. Caryn, you're in southern Florida. How far or how long?
3 day. 3 days.
3-day trip. So that's some crazy. Let me see here. Okay. Hey, Sue. So Sue is on. She's one of our frequent viewers. Thank you, Sue. So yeah, I thought we could maybe talk about all the things because, I did it a long time ago, but I was grooming for somebody and she did all the legwork. And it was kind of for like social media and like making things a little easier to plan, but I still think it's daunting. So I guess my first question for both of you, and Caryn, I'll let you answer first, is when you think about the first time you did this trip, because I know both of you have done this trip multiple times, how did you decide or how did you find where to stay each night with your horses? Because that's harder to find than a hotel for yourself.
Right. Well, I was lucky in that my trip is the first leg from Wisconsin to Cincinnati that I do is like 8 hours. And the first night I stay at my friend Meg Williams, who has a Hanoverian breeding farm. And so I know what stalls to go to if she's not there for some reason. And that's what I did the first year, and I've done it since. A friend told me about a place south of Atlanta in Macon, Georgia. So she told me about it, and it's a horse hotel. So there's a campground, but they also have a barn. And thankfully, she gave me that because I've been back there ever since. It's clean. The people meet you. They clean out your trailer, which I didn't expect at all.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know. They settle us in. And so we kind of got, because we didn't expect that, we got in the habit of bringing them cheese curds from Wisconsin, which they love.
Yep.
So that's how I did it, from friends. But I think now there's some more sources like on Facebook. I know, Megan, I remember watching one of your experiences where you're having a hard time with weather and you got on Facebook. But I did it with friends.
Yeah. So when I first started, I think that the first year was 2008, and I used MapQuest. Remember MapQuest? And I had a huge thick binder, and it's 5 days. Well, I've done 3 days, 4 days, and now I'm with 5 days. And I've taken the route through Denver to Utah and down to St. George into California. I've also taken a couple other routes that I never want to take, which is Oklahoma, Kansas. I've gone down to Texas. I do not like that route. The roads are bad. The farms that we've stayed at have been very sketchy, and the weather is usually bad. We usually hit an ice storm. We were stranded in Oklahoma one year, and that was terrifying. So I don't recommend that. So after MapQuest, we also ordered a book, and it was called Horse Hotels, and that I still have. Obviously, it's obsolete now with Google, but it was a fabulous book. Each chapter started with the state, and then it had a picture of the state and then where each horse hotel was. So, because I'm not very good at navigating and maps, and so I love GPS and I follow my GPS. Even though we do have an atlas in the truck, highly recommend that.
Yes, for sure.
But the road back in the day, before Google would tell us there's an accident or the road was out or the bridge was out, because we've had that experience. we'd get, or weather, we had to change our horse hotel. And that, like, midstream is very scary. So I've stayed at a lot of scary places. So thank God for Google, because now you can Google horse hotels and map out your trip. However, now I'm thankful we always go to the same locations every single time. And just like Caryn, they are friends. I know the stall they want me in. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. We don't have people that come out and clean our stall for us. We have to do that. Luckily, they do clean the stalls for us when we leave the next day. But it's so refreshing now after so many years to know where we're going.
Okay, next question, which is very similar topic. What can people expect to pay per stall per night for a horse hotel stall? What have you seen? Caryn, we'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'll start with that. My friend Meg doesn't charge me anything, but when I stop in Macon at the horse hotel, it's roughly $45 a night, which is well worth it. I mean, the shavings there, they have automatic waterers, which I still, when I first went there, I hung buckets because I didn't know if my horses would understand, automatic waterers. So I wanted to be sure. Now I know they drink from them. It's not a big deal, but I would advise anybody to still hang a water bucket if you're not sure your horse will drink from that. So the cost wasn't that much. And just to back up, I'm like Megan. The first trip we went down the first year, I'm never doing that route again either. I mean, you kind of learn, you think it looks good on the map, you have GPS, and I, like Megan, also carry an atlas because you never know if GPS will go out. But that first year, I was terrified because we were going through the Tennessee mountains and it was steep. You'd see the semi trucks, sand, escape route. I'm like gripping the steering wheel because I do 95 or more % of the driving. And I said, no, I'd rather go a longer route that adds an hour or two and feel like I'm comfortable and
yeah. How about you, Megan? What have you experienced?
Well, it depends on if we're staying on the farm with the horses. I can hear your keyboard. Mute you.
Sorry. we've got
I can't think. All I hear is keyboard.
Sorry, we've got a couple people saying hello. So welcome everyone.
Hey. So for me, it depends on whether we are staying with the horses at the farm. There's a few hotels like in New Mexico. We can actually stay, they call it the bunkhouse, and they have multiple rooms. It's wonderful. I love it. It's going to be on Barn Besties. It's one of my favorite places to stay because I can go out in the middle of the night and check on the horses. So this time we had 2 horses. I don't know what the breakdown is, but we had 2 horses and 1 room. It was $275 for that night. Now, individually.
That's nice because it's hotel for you two as well.
Oh yeah.
If you're unless you're gonna stay at a dive hotel.
No,
which nobody wants to.
That's changing topic. Do not. I mean, this is an exhausting trip. You need to eat well and you need to sleep well. And I can tell you across the country, the the Holiday Inn Express has the best beds, at least for me. But and then on average, like if it's just the horses, I would say $30 to $90 a night. And it depends. Like, so for instance, Nebraska is $30 a night and it's in a barn. It's amazing. Wonderful friends. And then we go to Colorado and it's a heated barn and it was, so that would be 45 because it was 90 total. So I better check my math, but, yeah, at most I probably paid $60 a night though per stall.
That's not bad, honestly.
No. And I stay in my horse trailer, or my husband and I do, so we're right there with the horses too. That not everybody has that luxury, but that is a nice thing to be able to be there.
And I can't do that, so I have to stay at hotels. And we actually already have a list of the hotels that we stay at, and it adds on points for show season. So it all works out.
That's a good sidebar there, Caryn. You've never had an issue? Obviously, you stay with a friend, but I would imagine some places, and I don't know if this is true, Megan, if you've come across this, does any of them say you can't stay in your vehicle or your trailer? No. Does anybody get upset? Okay, that's good.
And
oh yeah, go ahead.
Some of them have hookups. So I could have water or electric, but we're self-contained, so we don't even pay that extra money and just stay in the trailer, because all we want is a meal to eat, and we can walk. When we're in Macon, Georgia, we can walk to a couple restaurants, and we just want to get sleep and then get up early and get going.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely. So backing up on planning the trip, again, think back to your first time planning a trip such as this, right? First trip ever. How did you guys how did you start planning? What were you considering? There's the obvious things. You need to talk to your vet, because most people are aware when you cross state lines, you're going to need your Coggins and your health certificate. But were there other considerations you talked to with your vet? And this can go all different sorts of ways. So we'll see where it goes, because I have a couple ideas what I want to touch on. But Caryn, I'll have you touch in first, and then we'll catch Megan.
For me, I was most concerned about the weather. So I pick out the dates when I think I want to go, and I look at it a couple weeks ahead of time, although I do reserve where I'm going to stay at least 6 weeks in advance, because when you're going to Florida at a certain time of the year, the barn might fill with polo ponies and there's no space for you. So I'd rather reserve my spot and change it. But I don't want to travel through the mountains if there's ice or snow. So I look at that, and it's got to be well above freezing. I mean, I will move it a day or two either way just to avoid that, because I hate trailering in that kind of weather. And then the other factor I look at is most of the cities we go through some are big metro areas, but they haven't been too bad. The worst city I've ever driven through is Atlanta, Georgia. I don't care what time you go through that city, it's horrible. But we have found, if we plan to go there through on a Sunday afternoon when we're coming from the north, or when we're going home, we go early in the morning before commuters start. That works best. And we also check to make sure there's no football game in the stadium.
So before I punch it over to Megan, because I quickly muted her because I wanted to interrupt. What mountains do you cross? Because I believe Megan crosses 2 different mountain ranges.
We just go through, I think it's the Appalachian, the foothills, because we go through Louisville, Kentucky, and then we start going southwest. So we go through, the Chattanooga area, and then we come in north of Atlanta.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so same questions, Miss Megan, to you.
What's the question again?
What are you, again, your first ever experience doing this trip with horses, or second, maybe when you were a little older, what were the considerations you had to start thinking about other than what we've talked about as far as where you're staying? I specifically said, obviously you talked to your vet about Coggins and health certificates, but did you talk to your vet about other considerations for a long trip?
Lots.
Caryn brought up weather.
Yeah, I agree with Caryn. Like, weather is obviously tops, but going back to the vet, in consideration was how long are they in the trailer? Because we've done a 3-day trip. That's like 12 hours every day, right? Like, that's a lot of time in the trailer. And we've done that. And I think that's just too much stress on the horses. Then the other consideration with my trip is it's 5 days. So you need to know the hotels, because going through Utah, we'll go through Nebraska, which is about 7.5 hours, depending on how many times you stop. So I like to make it 8 hours every day for the horses. And then when we got to Denver and we would go to St. George, Utah, that's an 11 to a 12-hour trip. And now when you type it in your GPS, it says 9, but it doesn't take into account you have 3 mountain ranges, the Rockies, and there's 2 ranges in Utah and you are going 35 miles an hour. You're not going 70. You know, when I'm in Nebraska, I can go up to 73, 75 if it's a clear road, right? Because it's just straight all the way through. But driving through the mountains is horrifying because, first of all, you have the semi trucks that are going 35 miles an hour and you're a little bit faster than them, right? And so you go around them, and then you have all the cars going 70, 80 miles an hour in the mountain. And then you get into Denver and you're like, which way do I go? Utah or down to New Mexico? And it always, in the beginning, was it depended on whether there were multiple vehicle crashes. Like, and then I woke up one day and I was like, this is not worth it. I'm never doing this again. Plus, going through Utah, there is 2 to 3 hours. That's the other thing you need to think about is, where am I? Is there actual service? Because if I get a flat tire, am I going to be able to change it? Right. And, or what if it's something big, you know? So that was a huge concern. Same thing going through Texas. Texas and the Panhandle terrifies me. And you cross the state line and there is nothing there. If you need help, there is nothing there for hours. And same thing with gas stations, thinking about gas stations and hotels. But then also going back to the vet, so you're putting your horse, 12 hours on the trailer. Then also, like, do you put shavings on the trailer? Because I had a horse with pneumonia I was bringing back one year. I couldn't have any hay, any shavings. And I had to stop every 4 hours, unclip her, and let her drop her head down so she could drain her nose, right? And so you have the hay bag conversation. Do I put hay nets in? Well, I don't anymore because of her experience, but then talking to the vet, but I have to use shavings, right? So I'm still the dust. They're still breathing in the dust. I do close the windows. Obviously, their heads aren't hanging out or anything, but there's still a lot of dust going on. You have to take into consideration. But for 8 hours on the trailer, they're going to urinate, and that's dangerous. I always make sure I have fresh water for the horses because if we get stranded, that's a huge thing. But if we're leaving Wisconsin and it's 16 degrees, that water freezes. So, there's so many things to be thinking about. Ulcer guard. Don't you give ulcer guard, right? Like, and it's really horse dependent.
Yeah, there's a lot right there. I mean, we could go in many different directions. So do you communicate with your vet on okay, horse A and horse B are who are going, the horse, the vet would know each of these horses, like maybe this horse gets this needs and this horse has this needs, or do you just go, you brought up ulcer guard, we're just going to do it? Do you just have that conversation?
Talk to my vet. Yeah, I talk to my vet about each individual horse before we go. It just kind of backs my thought process. Also, the other thing I found that's pretty consistent with all the horses, as the duration goes on, they stop eating. So you have to think about that. So I like to have alfalfa on board, and they usually eat the alfalfa, and usually by day, again, it's dependent on the horse, but they stop eating their grain. Right.
Sure.
Like, so I also brought alfalfa cubes and soaked them for a different horse. Again, he stopped eating those by the end of the trip. So they really, if it's going to be that long of a trip, make sure you have alfalfa on board and that they're eating it, because it really does stress them out.
Especially for a 5-day. What about, I'll punt back to you, Caryn. Any special, yours is a 3-day trip, a little bit less, right, a little shorter, but still very long. 3 days is 3 days in a trailer. Yeah. Do you do anything special?
I do the ulcer guard. And I know my mare she's very put out that she should be in a trailer for 3 days. So she will not drink water on the trip until we get to where she's not in a trailer and she's in a stall. My gelding, he'll eat and drink, doesn't matter. He's just happy to have it. He's happy to stick his head out the window at gas stations and look around, and she's just miffed, Miss Princess. The other thing that I figured out my first couple of years, like one year when I arrived after 3 days, and I do put hay bags for him. the mare will sometimes pick at it. The gelding devours it. So you just have to know your horse and not get panicked about something. But the first couple of years I went there, they either got a horrible case of hives once they got there. And I didn't know if it was the change of, environment. And one year they both got a virus. So I couldn't ride them for 3 or 4 weeks because they had snotty noses and coughs. The last 2-3 years I've put them on, and I don't know if it's luck or if it's really working, but I put them on an immune booster. And I haven't for the last 2 years had problems with hives or a virus or anything. They come off, they're happy, they're in their stalls, and away we go.
That's good to know. We actually have a comment from Gadget in the chat. She says a big thing for their farm is to acclimate the horses to drink plenty of water. Their trick is using apple cider vinegar, but whatever I think whatever you can, your horses will. My horses, when they got a hold of alfalfa, love to make, I called it alfalfa tea. They dunk all their alfalfa in their water bucket, and then their water bucket would be like basically strained alfalfa tea. So, but yeah, that's any tricks I think you can come up with and like Megan says, sometimes having water from at home on board is quite helpful. It tastes what they're used to. I briefly lived in southern Wisconsin where the water coming out of the tap smelled like sulfur. Hard-boiled eggs, egg water. And I can tell you, I didn't like drinking it because it tasted like sulfur water. So, and that, it took a while when I moved my horses down there for them to even want to drink that water. So,
wow.
Yeah. But again, it's how much water can you carry? As Megan stated, you're leaving.
I put water in the, like the distilled water jugs you get, or the drinking water jugs. They're like gallons. And I filled up 2 or 3 of them. Now I know my mare won't really drink water till we get where we're going, and then she'll drink any water. So that's fine. But I use that on my route, and I have a small collapsible water bucket. So it doesn't take up that much space, and it's easy to lift up into the window. And then I pour the water in that, and the gelding drinks it. If he wants more, I can fill it. But trying to lift a big bucket up to the window is crazy. So that's what I do. And then that, it doesn't take up that much room to put a few of those gallon jugs in the back seat of your truck or whatever.
Since I've been stranded before, I like to bring a week's worth of, actually I'm bringing 3 months worth of grain. I have a week and a half worth of hay on board, and then I have about 2 6-gallon drums. So that way, each location I can refill and always have water. So if anything happens, any kind of emergency, we can survive it for a week.
Yeah. And I like to do a lot of hay too, to transition them to the hay that's down here, because it's different. So I did learn the first year. I loaded up my trailer with probably 10-15 bales of hay, and the place I was going to, it's a small barn, so they didn't have air conditioned hay storage, and I lost probably 5 or 6 bales because it went bad in the humidity. So now I bring enough just to get them transitioned. But yeah, so you got to know where you're going. But I had no clue. We have hay in Wisconsin we can stack for a year, and it's not a big deal. So that was a learning experience.
So, question for both of you, and we'll start, Caryn, with you. What kind of trailer, and I don't mean brand, but do you have like a 4-horse head-to-head, 2-horse straight load? Do you have a slant load? What do you haul in?
I have a 3-horse slant, and the first stall is where I put a lot of the hay, my bike, trunk, whatever I need goes in there. Now, next year, if I actually bring 3 horses, I don't know what I'm going to do because there goes that space. So it works fine. I can't get into it from the living quarters because I have it so stacked with hay and other things that I can't open that door. But I do have a side door, so I could get in on the driver's side of the trailer, so I could get into a stall if I absolutely had to. And I have crawled through the window of the horses, get in if I needed to. Hopefully I don't have to again, but I
No.
Horse people do what we need to do. Okay, and Megan, what about you?
I have a 4-horse slant. The first stall has, well, and we have mats that divide each of them. And the first one we had to build like a wood platform because I store 3 months worth of grain. That's a ton of grain. And I didn't want it because the mat is not substantial. My old dividers were metal. I didn't want on the trip that all that grain going into my horse's legs. So the grain goes there. And then in the truck bed, I put the hay and the shavings. And then I have extra long tack room. And so the water goes in there with all the things, all the tack. Also first aid kits for the horses, first aid kit for human, tools, all the things.
You touched on the next subject. Flat tires, truck blowups, all the things. Breakdowns, truck or trailer. Caryn, go. What have you experienced?
I, knock on wood, have been very lucky, but this is where I say have a good co-pilot, because I have not changed a tire since driver's ed in high school, and I'm not going to start now. So I bring my husband on these trips, and he's a good driver, but I am a little bit of a control freak. I want to drive. So his job is to take care of anything that's, that happens. He's supposed to look for gas when we need it, restrooms, food. And that's why I like truck stops. It has it all in one place, and it's one stop, because every stop you add 20 minutes to your trip. So we want to be efficient. So that's his job. And he's also supposed to watch for the ag inspection station. So we can come back to that.
Yeah.
I have not had any mechanical problems. I hope I didn't.
Oh, don't say it.
I know.
Don't.
2 years ago, skin of my teeth. 2 years ago, we got down here in my truck. At that time was, like 18 years old. I mean, it was in good condition. We had it, everything was up to date on it and watched. My husband is good at that kind of thing. 2 weeks after I was here, the transmission went out. All I could think was, oh my God, what if that had happened going through Atlanta or going through the mountains? And so last year we bought a new truck. Oh my God, did that hurt? But I feel so much more confident. So you really got to I would rather have an older trailer that's safe and sound, but have a very, very reliable truck. So that's my piece of advice to anybody out there taking a long trip like this.
So let's back up one step before we shift to Megan's answer on that. What do you do to prep your trailer and your truck for the trip? Knowing it's coming, knowing the distance you're going, what's your planning on that?
Well, now we have a pretty new truck, so it tells you if something's wrong or going. The old truck, my husband was really good at that. We would take it into the mechanic and have him do a thorough review of it. I mean, top to bottom. I didn't care what it cost. I just didn't want to have anything happen. We checked the tires to make sure they were good to go, check the belts, check the oil, change the oil, all those kind of things. But we took it to our very reliable mechanic to check over and make sure everything was okay. Trailer, same thing. Husband would crawl under it and just check and oil and grease whatever needed to be done. But we keep the trailer. Well, we kept both of them up anyway, just to go to shows and stuff. But he did extra eyes when we were going on this long trip.
Cool. All right, Miss Megan, all those questions right over to you.
I've been very, very lucky. I've had 3 trailers I've taken across the country. My first trailer, was 18 years. It lasted, and I would say every 2 years I got new tires, unless someone recommended I get new tires. I think that's a big thing. And every November I have a mechanic that looks at the truck, and and I have a different guy, a trailer guy, who looks over my trailer. So, and then when I get to California, I have a guy that does oil changes, and then when I get home in April, the truck and trailer are looked at the Wisconsin places. So it's watch. So I am not a handy person. I don't get into any of that, and I trust the professionals to do that, and I've been very, very lucky. However, don't be confident with new things. So that was my lesson this year. I bought a new trailer, and so
New when?
last year, yeah, it was last year.
April?
No, in January, but I didn't get to experience it and drive it until April. So I'm very lucky. A client let me borrow a tiny trailer, and I can tell you a 2-horse is way too small to use, but I at least was able to bring out my 2 horses and all the things. It just wasn't a lot of room, and I couldn't bring grain. So check. Big trailer. But then this year, I have only had that trailer in use probably since April, and I think we talked about it. Probably 3,000 miles were on the trailer. And going into Denver, there's a little stretch on 76. There's no service. And so right before that, we stopped at the gas station, checked the truck over, filled it up, and start driving. And I'm driving, and I look out the window, and I'm like, man, I see something flapping. And I was like, what is that? And I've only one time have I had a tire go, and it didn't look like the tire. It looked like the wheel well. And I was like, I just got to stop. And we're, on the interstate, and get out. The tire had totally blown. And these are brand new tires. And so we were very lucky. So I immediately took pictures. My friend, I think you need a very good co-pilot, and you need a support system. And so my support system will remain nameless because he doesn't like his name used, but I immediately called him, sent pictures, and I was like, could I at least get to the exit, and can I drive on it? Because all the weight was over the front tire, and this was the back rear tire on the driver's side, and there is no way we were going to be able to change that tire because we would have been run over. Like, it was very dangerous to be there. So that was step one, get off the road. And so we, thank God for GPS, we knew it was 5 miles. I went really slow, pulled in, and my co-pilot, went into the cafe that was there. They gave us a card, and he called them, and they were going to be out in 45 minutes, the tire people. And so I started pulling things out. And again, this is again where you get too comfortable with your things. So I pulled out my toolbox, and I only have one lug nut that's long that goes over the screw, and worked just fine for the tire. However, we couldn't get the spare off because it was the wrong size. And so it wasn't in there, and I was confident, new things. So I'm really glad this actually happened so I can get new tools. And the great thing is the gentleman came out in 20 minutes of us being there, and he had all the power tools. That's another thing, is make sure you bring, what do you call them? One of those drills with the battery.
Impact wrench.
Thank you. But the thing that scares me about that is when you're driving through cold states, it may, the batteries may die. So
keep it in your car.
Keep it in the car, but there isn't a lot of room. But anyway, I'll make sure you think about these things. We have a breaker bar. Also, the tire thing that we drove the trailer up on was plastic, and the horses stayed in the trailer. Well, it broke. So I would advise getting metal. We were able to get it done and back on the road within 45 minutes, which is a miracle. Because if it had been for us, you can see where we still be there. And then the other problem is now my spare tire was on the trailer. And so and the roads in Colorado were the worst I've ever seen it. And it was the most I've ever seen people on the side of the road fixing flat tires. Our roads are in so disrepair. It used to be Oklahoma, but Nebraska was bad. But these potholes in Colorado were huge. It's not a surprise to me. But what we found out is the tire repair guy said our tires were cheap tires. Remember, brand new trailer. And again, in my mind, I thought, oh, I bought a new trailer. I'm fine for 2 years. I had someone look at it. They looked fine. Well, they were 10-ply tires. If you're really going across the country, spend more money and get 12, get 14. And so then we made some phone calls. Avi was on the phone, called at least 7 places. No one has 12 or 14 ply tires in stock. Okay, so, and I wasn't going to go further without a spare tire. And so again, I called my support, my wonderful client. She started making phone calls and found the only place in Denver that had it. We had to make it there before 5, and we made it at 4, luckily. And I put 4 brand new tires on that trip. I just don't mess around. Like, just don't do it. But again, this is where my thought process was: brand new trailer, I'm going to be fine. No problem. I have a wonderful truck. It's a 2017. Forget it. Always have it checked.
Yep.
And you put new tires on your truck before you left.
Yes, I have invested in a lot of rubber, and I can tell you my family discount in Wisconsin is great. Because I spent more money on 4 trailer tires than I did the 6 tires I put on my dually. I could have gone to the spa.
It's probably 5 tires, right? Or did you keep the same spare? Did you upgrade your spare tire to a 14 ply? Okay.
I didn't. I kept one of I was cheap. I did keep one of them. Yeah, I'll be honest. Yeah. I was cheap because that was a lot of money. I can go home and get a new one.
Exactly. Yep. Done too.
But they were wonderful to work with. Les Schwab, they're a new tire company, and they fit us in. They did it, and and the tires are under warranty. So if we got stuck somewhere, I could go to any location and they would give me a new tire. So I did pay for that. And it was actually a great decision that we did that, because the very next day, I can't remember what state we were in, but it was the first time they blocked the interstate, and we took the ramp, and the police were pointing, you got to go there. And I'm like, where are we going? And we drove over a cattle guard onto a dirt road, and to get back on the interstate, 10 miles later. And I was like, thank God the 2 of them, did the search on the internet. But just imagine if there wasn't internet, how would have that happened? So yes, make sure you have a huge support system that you can call. Like, for instance, and I love Facebook. When there was an ice storm, I was somewhere in Oklahoma. There was no horse hotel anywhere nearby. So I just put it on Facebook and I said, guys, I'm stuck in an ice storm. Our next exit is this. And Melissa Allen, amazing human being, started calling around, and we took that exit, and there was a horse hotel 3 miles away. Boom. Wow. And we stayed the night. So make sure you utilize all of your resources. Like Barn Besties.
Good plug. Thank you, Megan. No, I mean, I think that's why I wanted to do this topic tonight, because honestly, obviously, I knew Megan had a pretty interesting trip out to California. And then I was like, oh, Caryn, you've been in Florida a little bit longer because you leave a little earlier, but probably a little over a month earlier than Megan does. But
purposeful, because
the weather.
I went after Thanksgiving, and that was through those mountains, and I said never again. So now I go in mid-November to get ahead of the weather, and I stay till the end of April to hopefully get out of most of the bad weather back home.
Yeah, so let's switch gears and talk about that. How do you is there anything different that you do for plotting and planning your trip home? So you've been in this kind of, we'll call it vacation barn, and wherever you're staying. Caryn, you're in your trailer. Megan, you're at a what, bed and breakfast or Airbnb?
Mm-hmm.
So when do you start? I mean, you must have an idea of, okay, I want to leave at this approximate calendar date. But how much swing or sway do you have where you're able to say, oh, there's a nasty storm system. I either need to leave earlier or I need to wait 2, 3, 4 days and let it go by before I head home.
Yeah. Well, fortunately now that I'm tired, I have some wiggle room, you know, not like Megan, who's got to get home to clients and other things, or other people, you know, heading for jobs. So I usually plan the end of April. And so again, I make my reservation at the Horse Hotel in Macon right away. And then I check the weather. But usually going back is not a big deal. But it's I actually like the trip going home better because we get to Macon and then we can get through Atlanta. We get up really early. I hate Atlanta. I mean, I love the city. I used to live there. I just don't like pulling a trailer through it. It's grown exponentially in traffic, and I loved living there, but trailering, one time we had 12 accidents.
Yeah.
That added about almost 2 hours to our drive through the city. It was horrible. So that's why we get up really early or come on a Sunday when we're coming down. So that's the only difference, is what day do I hit Atlanta, coming or going.
I remember driving a horse trailer through Atlanta, and Caryn and Megan, this was before GPS. One of us was driving and one of us had the map. And then one of us was going, oh God, we have to be 6 lanes to the left to take that exit. And then you took that exit. And then a half a mile later, you had to be 6 lanes to the right to follow it over as you're zipping through. And it was, and that was no GPS. That was looking at a map, looking at signs, and the other person trying to not hit anybody or get hit. So yes, Atlanta. And I know Megan, California is.
It's terrible. Oh, it's scary. I mean, as soon as you cross the line, the pollution, the traffic, and they just cut you off. They honk at you. They're so dangerous. And I make sure, you count the pole, like, I think it's like 8 seconds. I think I try to keep like 12 seconds, as you're driving, to gauge. And they just, like, 7 of them zip right in, and they're right on your fender. It is horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. So I just go really slow.
Yep. They don't understand you can't stop on a dime. And even if you could, you're not going to do that to your horses.
No.
But yeah, I almost was in an accident in Atlanta because somebody cut in. Just like you say, you try to leave space, but they think, oh, great, I can zip through and get to the other lane. And I bet there wasn't 3 inches between my bumper and theirs. It is horrifying.
My blood really pressure has risen just having this conversation and thinking about, and that's anywhere, honestly, but it's worse in the big cities. I'm sure Denver, Albuquerque, Tucson, Phoenix Denver wasn't bad. Well, you did it early in the morning, right?
Yeah, it's California. I mean, this trip was great because my amazing co-pilot kept getting me up at like 3-4 a.m. And so we were just like, and it lucked out. We were over a weekend. I think that really helped. The other problem we struggle with is, like, it's the new year. And so we usually get to California New Year's Eve. So, as you're driving over a weekend and New Year's Eve is like a Saturday or a Friday, the drivers are really scary because they start partying a couple days earlier. So that's scary. So this trip was great. We were first thing in the morning, and New Year's Eve was, I think, on a Tuesday. So no one was out there partying. And then going home, like, my trip is so easy. It literally, I text everyone, the horse hotels, and they usually always tell me yes. So it's very easy to plan, and they understand the trip. And usually I don't change the dates, but I also have Mumsy, and she is looking at the weather a month out, and then we check base 2 weeks out, and then we decide like between the weather patterns when to go. Like this weather pattern, we were so lucky. The weather was great. And then a couple days later, it was Nebraska. I mean, was that scary storm? I mean, we would have not been able to pass. But
2 days ago.
yeah, Nebraska scares me actually. I've almost died in Nebraska. You know, in the winter, it's not a joke. Like, and I've driven through a lot of snow in my life. But it is just wicked. The wind and the ice. It's something about Nebraska. You really, it's almost as bad as driving through mountains. You got to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
So Caryn brought this up, and we said we'd circle around to it. So we'll start with you, Caryn, because you'd brought it up, and I wanted to touch on this. The agricultural checks. So how does somebody know when they're entering a state to be looking for it, other than you're driving down the road and there's something that says I think I need to pull off?
Yeah.
How did you your first time into any state? Was it driving upon a sign, or did you have knowledge from a friend, or did you do some research?
I knew a friend who had been coming down 6 years to Florida before I did, and she said there's only one place you have to stop at, and it's the Florida Ag Inspection Station. So, and you have to stop there whether you have a horse in your trailer or not. I had a friend who just blew by, and they came after her, and they needed to stop, and she said, well, I don't have a horse, I just have my bikes in the back. And he's like, it doesn't matter, you have to stop. So what I learned too from that, and you can ask your vet too, where there are, not all states require you to stop, but I like to know which mile marker it's at, because it's just a small sign. It's just a normal little sign. It's not big flashing lights like you must stop here. So I like to know where it is. And I was surprised it wasn't right over the border. I thought, they'd want to stop the traffic right away to make sure you were legit. No, it's about half an hour into Florida. And so I said to Mark, my co-pilot, I said, would you find out what mile marker it is? So he likes to use his phone and ask Siri to do everything. So he's calling and he goes, hey, Siri, where's the ag inspection station? And she said, I can't find any egg inspection station. And then, he was like getting irritated. So he just kept getting louder. Like, where's the egg inspection station? And she goes, I'm sorry, I can't find any egg inspection station. I am laughing so hard that we finally found it, but that's been a joke. So now we have it written down. We know exactly what mile marker it is. If you're on a crowded interstate and there's a semi, you might not see the sign that you have to pull over the next time and have them look at your paperwork and make sure, yes, you have 2 horses. Yes, that one has a blaze. Yes, that one's black. So that's what I don't know what it's like to go to California though, Megan. Do they have more than one inspection station?
They do. I actually have a funny story about the Florida inspection, because I've gone to Florida and we drove and I blew right by it. I was the typical blonde, just drove right by it and
didn't see it.
No.
Yeah, I had no idea. I had no clue there was an inspection station. I did not do research. I never even thought about it. We're in the United States. Why do we do this? And I honestly think it's really important they do it, just to cut diseases and knowing where it is. So I don't think it's an inconvenience. But I just, and the police came out, lights and everything. And I was like, he's not after me. I've never been pulled over with a trailer. So I kept driving. I'm just like, I'm from Wisconsin. Yeah. And so he was like, what are you doing? Why didn't you pull over? And I was like, I had no idea. And he's like, and he starts writing me a ticket, and it breaks. The pen breaks. And he's like, do you have a pen? And I was like, no. No, I don't. And he's like, well, fine. I'm letting you off this time. So that's actually how I learned that there are inspection stations. Now, going to California, they're much nicer, and the signs are well lit. They're blinking, and they tell you whether you are ag, livestock, or commercial. And you can be stopped, and you have to, each trip has been different for me. Every single trip is different. So I've been stopped in Colorado, um, Arizona, New Mexico, and sometimes they're close. So like this trip, we only had two. We had one in New Mexico, and coming into California. And in the past, they actually required that we open the trailer. It's been several years since we've had to open the trailer, and they used to do a really good job in looking at the horses, and they'd look at the coggins. This trip, New Mexico just waved us on, and they had different signs. They, like loaded, unloaded, livestock over here. So they were all segregated. And then they give you it was really bizarre. They gave us the thumbs up. So I just went, I wonder if they're going to come after me, but I just went, I did my usual blonde thing, kept driving. And then coming into California, they stopped us, and then they took pictures of the health certificate, and the coggins. And then he also informed me this year you're supposed to go online, print out a form, and have it ready for them. But how would anyone know that?
Wow.
Yeah.
And so he did give me the form, but they have, I mean, I had all my paperwork in order. He didn't have a problem with it. He took copies, but I'm like, this is the first year in I don't know how many years that's ever happened. So I found that really interesting too. So it changes. You got to be alert, always be alert. So, and sometimes they're closed. Look for the flashing lights in the sign.
If they have it. I feel like Florida doesn't have flashing lights.
No flashing.
Oh, really? Yeah,
No.
California has flashing, and I think New Mexico did too. So I
It
think
looks
they're
like a way station. It just looks like
Yeah.
a normal semi way station. So if
Yep.
I know, I would just have driven.
Yep. So be looking when you cross state lines for ag stations.
So on that topic, Caryn, do you guys have to pull into weigh stations if they're open? Because you're heavy with horse trailer truck. Your gross vehicle tonnage is going to be. Have you ever had to pull into a weigh station?
No. Nope.
No. Have you ever been asked if you are commercial, like at an ag?
I haven't, but I don't have a big trailer like Megan, but no, I haven't. I and mine has the obvious living quarters. So I think they think, well, she's not commercial going on vacation.
Yeah, I have been asked many times if I'm commercial. And you do have, and I'm not commercial, and you do have to have the lettering and the tags and all of that.
Do either of you have your CDL?
Nope.
Commercial driver's license, for those watching at a later point or on our live. CDL, commercial driver's license. I remember, and maybe you guys remember, not that long ago, probably a decade ago, where there was discussion that horse trailers were going to fall under the need to become a CDL requirement for over 10,000 pounds and blah, blah, blah.
And hours.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours we're driving, but I think there was too much of a pushback.
Yeah.
They did not, but I'm sure it'll come back again.
Yeah, there's always that push back and forth for sure. So if you're both in your respective vacation, we're just going to call it vacation homes for several months, how far out before you're kind of designated, I'm getting out of here and going home, do you contact the local veterinarian and say, I need my health certificate?
1 month.
A couple.
How long is the health certificate good for? Because you can't get it too soon, or it doesn't cover your dates, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's 30 days. Yeah.
Okay.
And if your Coggins isn't good, and mine isn't, so I usually have to get a Coggins when I'm down here to go home, and that takes me through, the next year. That takes a few days to have that processed, but a couple weeks. And I know when I'm going to be doing it, because I don't know how you do it, Megan, but I have to get a airplane ticket for my husband to come fly here to help drive home.
Mm-hmm.
So I pretty much know I allow a little extra time for him just in case something, flexes, but So I start planning before at least a month out, but I don't actually put stuff into the works, like the veterinarian.
I'm the same. I start planning a month out. I call the vet a month out because it usually takes a week or two for the vet to show up. And I do my Coggins at home in December. So I don't have to do my Coggins before I come home. I had thought about that. I didn't want to just, all that rigmarole. I try not to use the California vets. But I do, I have, they have great vets. It's not my vet, and it's not as easy. They have different policies. So I try to get it as much done as possible and just have the health certificate ready to go. And then, like I said, they all know when I'm coming. I just send them a text probably 2 weeks out. It takes me 5 minutes to plan the trip. It's so easy for me now.
But it didn't used to be. I understand that.
Oh, no, it did not. But I mean, it's been like, I don't know, 17 years of like doing this. So now we got it. And actually, this is my worst trip ever.
Oh, no,
Hauling
really?
out there. Normally the trips are so easy. I mean, this one was brutal, and I don't know what it was about, because I mainly do the driving, and luckily I had my co-pilot, who's my fiance, and we've been together for 5 years, so I've been training him how to drive the trailer just in case something like this would happen. So on this trip I got super sick. Food, like I said, you got to eat what you normally eat, which normally I do, but I had a fajita, and we even ate at the same place we normally eat. But the next morning I did not feel good. So he got to drive. He was really happy because he never gets to drive, and he did do a great job, and I'm really thankful. I've been training him for a while, but I would have rather been driving.
Yeah, you're like me. My husband's great. He can park and back better than I can, but I get so nervous with him driving, and he's not a bad driver, but I think it's just me. I want to control it.
Yeah, totally. I'm always
my friends.
He makes fun of me that I'm always I'm like, babe, you're going too fast. Babe, slow down. Go wide. Go wide. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's also better for our relationship if I drive.
And speaking of co-pilots, besides my husband looking for gas and restrooms and food, he's also in charge of the radio, and he has to get stations I want. So I would recommend, if anybody's doing long trips, I don't know if you agree with this or not, Megan, I like having Sirius, because I don't like going for stretches and just hearing certain radio programs, especially in the rural areas. I'm like, all we're getting. So I splurge and get Sirius, and I also get books on tape, which make the time go fast.
I think that's brilliant. I'll tell you a funny story, because my old co-pilot used to be my mother, and I did used to buy her a plane ticket each way because she was not staying with me. And so this is the way it would go. We'd get in the truck and trailer, and I would turn on the radio. Oh, I need absolute silence. Absolute silence. And then in 5 minutes, she's on the cell phone. Bah, 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 bah. And I'm like, this is not silence, and I need a radio. Like, we were the worst together. It was, and then she would only bring like vegetables on the trip, which technically you should probably have, but it was awful. And then Avi and I, we go across the country, and we'll listen to like YouTube, motivational things. We'll listen to the radio when we want, and it's like, when we want to listen to country, we're both on the same wavelength. When we want to listen to rap, because by day 4 you're kind of angry and batty. You listen to different things. So I think having a co-pilot you get along with, but still 5 days in the truck, it's a lot. And really, by day 4, I am batty. I'm like, I'll grab the steering wheel and I'm like, get me out of here. So I don't know how semi drivers do it for a living.
I don't either. And my husband and I have this, whatever happens in the truck, it just stays in the truck. And and we're there. We are not mad at each other anymore. We will not snip at each other anymore, but you get exhausted because you're so on for 8, 9, 10 hours of driving. that you just have to sort of make a rule like, I'll forgive you when we get there.
Yep. Yeah. Well, this trip when we were unloading our stuff at the Airbnb, like we'd already taken care of the horses, we survived the trip, but then we snapped at each other at the Airbnb, and then it was like, okay, it's the trip. I kind of like your version. I think we'll implement that. That what happens, and even though we were out of the truck by then, but maybe like the 24 hours after, and then we were totally fine. But it was a lot. It's a lot.
Yep. I have one other recommendation, if I can.
Yeah.
One of the best things that we bought was a cooler. Even though I have the living quarters, when you're driving, you want a cooler that has water and maybe those wonderful vegetables your mom has and other things. It plugs in. It's an electric cooler, so you can plug it into an outlet. You can plug it into your cigarette lighter, and it keeps things cool. And so you don't have to mess with ice bags and water melting and all of that. It's great.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Keep it in the back seat or something, so we're within arm's reach.
Within my husband's arm's reach, because I'll be like, I need a water. Oh, I would candy bar.
So what do you two pack for snackage in your vehicles on these long road trips?
Lots of water. I indulge myself with the coffee. Oh, what is it? The Starbucks. The mocha frappuccino. In case I need a little lift, but mostly water, nuts, cheese, crackers, and yes, okay, some little candy bars.
Although this year we didn't pack that much. We have meat sticks, lots of water, lots of hydration drinks, ginger. We have little ginger slices that we munch on, and then granola bars. What else do we have? We're pretty good, pretty healthy. And then we stop at, we usually eat at restaurants, like not gas station food.
Yeah. Can you do that for a lunch? Is that harder to do in the middle of the day hauling, Megan, to stop at an actual sit down restaurant?
Well, we do, yeah. Subway, we usually do like a Subway. We get one of those veggie wraps, or a chicken wrap, and we sit down. Yeah, because you got to break it up, and I have to walk around. We usually do at least one lunch and then 2 to 3 stops where it's a gas station, and we walk around because it's hard on the body.
So on that note, it's also hard on the horses. So do you consider that? Do you take a longer lunch break to say, you know what, let's give these horses an hour to just not be in a moving, bouncing trailer. They can relax, urinate, eat maybe they'll actually eat some hay. Or do you just...
Go ahead, Karen.
I don't, because we're not doing the really long. I mean, maybe our longest day is 10 hours. If we hit Atlanta, maybe it ends up being 11. But when we do stop, we open the windows so they can stick their heads out, and I call it, they can watch TV, because they like to watch, the traffic. And at one stop, it was so charming. I wish I'd had my camera out. There were 2 police officers in a car right next to us. And they looked and they go, oh, those are beautiful horses. We have some carrots. Can we give that to them? And I wish I'd had a picture of these 2, strong police officers handing carrots to my horses. So, that's all we do. Maybe if I was driving for longer stints, I'd give them more time, but I just want to keep going. I give them time there to, go to the bathroom, have some water, stretch their neck out, and then we move on, because I just want them to get to a stall where they can roll and walk around and just rest when we get there.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I just want to get there, but we do have to stop for the people 30 minutes, but for the horses, like it's individual. So like this year, one of my horses, every time we stopped, he'd paw. So I want to get on the road. He did not want a break. He was like, get me there now. So this trip was like, okay, let's quick eat. Let's go. Because as soon as we put it in park, he was like, come on, get me out of here. So.
Yep.
Understandable. How do you guys find your vets and farriers for these months that you're away? Is it just, okay, this is the barn that I'm at, and these are the vets and farriers they have, so this is who I use?
Where I am, I'm lucky. The woman who owns the place has lived here 38 years, so she knows all the vets, all the I use her farrier, who's phenomenal. I've had a couple things like the virus, some other things that were out of the ordinary, so to speak. I mean, one year my mare had a freak accident where she slid on pavement because there is no place to do hacks. Like, we are so lucky back in Wisconsin to be able to go for hacks and trail rides. Where I am, it's in the city. It's like a residential community that has barns. So one day I had the idea, like, oh, my poor horse is tired of the ring work, so we were just going to go around the residential area, and there's one house that doesn't have horses, and they have a polished concrete driveway, and I didn't realize it till we crossed it, and her leg slipped out, and she seemed fine. She did everything she could not to land on me, and I took her back. I put her out in the outdoor, and we walked, trot, and cantered. She felt fine. The next day, her hind leg was totally blown up all the way past the hock, and she had a hairline fracture of her hind leg. Yeah. And I was panicked. Fortunately, my barn manager knew, a really good vet, and he came out, and I was like sobbing, like, is this career ending? I mean, will she be okay? And he's like, yeah, it's just a hairline. It's fine. She just has to have stall rest. So, 6-7 weeks later, I'm paying very expensive board for a horse to stand in a stall. But I'm lucky because Terry, where I keep my horses, has been here, so she knows the lay of the land. So I'm lucky that way.
For me, I asked my farrier at the time if he knew anyone in California, and he recommended someone, and that farrier was not taking clients, but his assistant was. And so every year, again, a month out, I tell him I'm coming to California. These are the horses. Can we jump on your schedule? And he's always looking forward to having me out there. Thank God, because honestly, I'm only there for 2 trims, and I'm not a big client, and so I feel very fortunate that he'll come out for me. And then the vet, I did use the vet of the farm. I didn't particularly gel well with him, and so I did find another vet, and they also use him. So I feel really fortunate to find 2 people that I really like working with. So I just stick with them until they tell me I can't.
Right.
So what do you do as far as vaccinations prior to going on these trips? Do you plan out your vaccinations a certain amount of time ahead of the trip so that your horses are current on vaccines and, not too close to the trip where that might compromise them, make them feel, but not too far gone where probably should have done it closer? Caryn, we'll go with you first.
I do my fall vaccinations about 30 days out, which is exactly the time I need the interstate health certificate and a Coggins. So that works out fine. And then when I come back, I have my vet do all the spring vaccinations at home because I want my records to be as much as possible in one place. And that splits it up, 5-6 months. And again, I use that immune supplement. I don't know if it's working, but it seems to, and the GastroGuard. So there's really not that much to prepare them to go home.
Is there anything before we switch to Megan, anything that like the state that you're going to, Florida in your case, California and Megan's, that's a requirement from the state that you have to have your horse vaccinated for? For instance, off the top of my head, I'm thinking like Venezuela encephalitis, VE.
It's nothing that I wouldn't do at home. So it is
special. Okay. All right, Megan, on to you.
My vaccines are given in March and September. So going, it's not a problem, but depending on the horses, because and all the horses are different. You know, if I have a passport for the CDIs, then they have to be done, which will usually be in the beginning of March. So that way they have at least 3 weeks before we haul. And if they have a reaction, you know, like it's not the week before we leave. Um, some horses sell. Sometimes I wait until April. It just depends on the situation and what I'm doing with the horse. Because some I've imported horses right into LAX, and they've been. I didn't want to with horses being imported. I like them to acclimate a month or two before I start giving them any of our vaccines. So sometimes I wait until we come home, and it's 2 or 3 weeks until they've settled in at home, and then we vaccinate. So again, everybody is just so different.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider if you've got something flying across the ocean and acclimating to California and then having to go maybe a month later or whatever to Wisconsin.
It's a
And a
lot.
5-day trip, another
Yep.
long haul or
Yes.
And I have to say they acclimate better flying into Wisconsin than they do LAX. The I don't know, the ecosystem out here is just so difficult. There's dust, there's different types of pollens, there's the pollution, and the horses are just not used to it. So they really struggle, and they struggle going into Wisconsin, but more so here.
Okay, I got wild, crazy questions. Caryn, any crazy Florida weather while you're down there? I'm assuming you're out of the hurricane season, but have you ever gotten like a random pop-up tropical storm that's been crazy freaky, or are you pretty safe in the months you're down there? Because you're there longer.
Right. I'm pretty safe. I come in after the hurricane, basically, but who knows with climate change that could shift. Um, it's surprising, and I don't know if it's because I get acclimated, but it does get chilly here in January. I know for those of you in the north, but it's a wet cool. And so if I'm going to a show or I'm scribing at Global or something, I will probably have my down coat on and have hand warmers because it's chilly when that wind comes for a couple weeks down here. I know it sounds terrible, but really when you're sitting outside but no, I haven't had any wild, crazy, scary weather.
Tornadoes or anything weird?
No, but the tornadoes that they got down here, that was weird. But no, I came after that.
Okay. Megan, you have potential for the dust storms on the drive. You could hit dust storms. You're going through deserts and things like that. When you get to Cali, you have the potential for the Santa Ana winds, fires, and earthquakes.
Yep. So
tell us all the stories.
Well, I gotta say, I think overall very lucky. So I've only lived through one dust storm going out to California, and that was terrifying. Because it's like a snowstorm, only it's sand and everything's pelting your vehicle. So that's scary. Like you just gotta pull off the side of the road, park, and pray. And then the weather out here, this is their rainy season, which can be difficult because California is not used to moisture. And so it's one thing to show when it rains in Wisconsin, it's another thing to show when it's raining in California. They don't really have an infrastructure for all that rain. And with climate change, they're getting a lot more rain, a lot more mud. And so the last 2 years, there's been atmospheric rivers. And so experiencing that was not fun. However, I have to say this year might be even scarier because it's a very dry year and they haven't had a lot of moisture. And I was hoping to actually get video for Barn Besties of a dust storm today. I did not. So hopefully tomorrow, I guess that's the only positive of what's going on here. So what's going on here now is in the Palisades, which is LA, it's about 2 hours away from us. There's a storm and there is 80 to 100-mile-an-hour winds. That is terrifying. It went from 200 acres to now 700 acres. So we're watching, and I messaged
Fire?
my Airbnb lady, and I was like, should we be worried about a fire? And she's like, you should always be worried about a fire. And so that's terrifying. And so I also have a firefighter friend, and he has always instructed me, always have an evacuation plan. So what's your plan? How are you going to get out? And we're on a mountain, so there's only 2 ways off the mountain. And I know where they are. I know how to get to the trailer. Again, I don't want to live through it, but I've thought about it on how to do that. Obviously, I'm with people who have evacuated. So that, to me, I'm actually very scared about this year, not last year. Last year, being on the mountain, the water all ran off. So I was in a good location. So the water really didn't bother us that much here, but it does off the mountain in LA. So I'm actually very concerned about fire this year and living through more dust storms. And then I did experience my first earthquake, and it was not what I expected last year. It just felt, or it sounded like Bigfoot stepped on our house. There was no shaking. I was like, well, what? Like, the Airbnb lady messaged me, and she's like, are you okay? That was an earthquake. And I was like, Bigfoot? Really? So, so I haven't experienced too many earthquakes, but the fire scares me.
What is the plan? Like, what's the barn that you're at, Megan? What is the evacuation plan? I'm assuming they always have a plan in place, right?
Well, they have zone. Well, I mean, I have my horse trailer. Like, I have 2 barns that I'm at. They're within 5 minutes of each other. So I would have to go to the first farm, hook up, load up the horse, drive to the other one, hook up, like, bring him, put him in the trailer and go, and then I was actually Googling this today. What zone are you in? And I mean, I think the news, the police will inform you this is time to evacuate. And when it's that, you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's definitely different. I mean, we've had in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, which is a lot of timber. They do get forest fires up there, but it's different. It's
Yeah.
different.
It's terrifying when you think about it, because I'm like, oh my God, what is going on?
So do they have a place where the horses would go? Like, do they say, okay, well, Megan, you're part of the barn and this is where we would land? Or I've heard of places like some of the, what is the name of some of the big show facilities? Indio, does Indio still have the big show facility? I don't know, is there a big show facility in Rancho Murieta?
I think that's really far north. I think that's like
Okay.
7 hours north. I guess for
wow.
me, I'm not as concerned because, like, I have the lady in Tucson I can message if I really want to get away from the fire. Like, I can get on Google. But yeah, there are always places, like, there's multiple friends I have. There's Temecula that's down the road that we could go to, but I think it really depends on where is the fire coming from. Like, you can't always go to one place, depending, like, what if the fire's over there? So I guess that doesn't worry me so much. It's the fact that there's only 2 roads in and out. Like, for me, that scares me because there's only 2 roads. Which one are you going to take? And let me tell you, I'd rather take the normal way out, because the other one is like a 26% grade. down. I've never taken the trailer that way. But I've driven around here, and so I know where to go because of my fireman friend. I didn't even ask the barn. I just plotted out my plan. Like, this, if it's go time, this is my trailer, this is where it's at, this is where I'm going. And with the horse hotels and Google, it's so easy to find a place. It's getting them off the mountain. Like, we're on a mountain. So that's more concerning to me than anything that I don't want to ever experience.
That's crazy.
And I have to say, like, again, being naive Wisconsin person, I always thought the fires were more in the fall, like, that's when the Santa Ana winds are. These winds are just a winter storm. Like, and I have experienced that in August, the Santa Ana winds. That's terrifying. Like, I didn't think I was going to actually get on the plane to leave. And they were like, oh, yeah, it's totally fine. And I'm like, oh, my God. So I thought we were coming to California after fire season. So that's actually why I'm very nervous this year, because there's a fire, like, close. So to me, that's terrifying.
How far is the fire from you?
2 hours away.
Okay. So it's better than 30 minutes away or 30 miles away, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that's close. Like,
it is.
Yeah. It's like, oh my God. Will it come here? Hopefully not. I don't, that would be a lot. That would be a lot of destruction. But I mean, in 1 hour, it went from 200 acres to 700. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, from the winds, right?
From the winds, yeah. And it's very windy here.
How has that been driving the trailer in the kind of winds that they get out there? Because you actually, Megan, in one of your short videos mentioned how in some of the Great Plains, you have to be careful about the winds on, like, let's say Nebraska coming off, the mountains or something. You've seen semi trailers tipped over and stuff. So what's it like? Even like California, the famous Santa Ana winds are so strong.
I try to not drive in them, and I don't think I've ever driven in winds that strong. But we came after these semis, and the devastation. I mean, it looked like they were sleeping on their sides. Like, and these are big semis, one after the other, and I'm like, oh my God. So if I was driving in winds, like, I would just stop, because I could also flip over. Like, if a semi could, I mean, I'm not as high as them, but I'm higher than a car. So I'm just never going to try to put my horses in a position like that. I would personally stop, probably at a gas station, and wait it out.
Mm-hmm.
But the dust storm I was in, it was in Utah. And I was actually driving a car that year, because I had hired a professional to haul the horses. That was the one and only year I did that. And I just pulled over and waited it out. So I luckily have never driven it with a truck and trailer. So I won't do that to my horses.
That horses, you'd have to close up all their air vents.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because I would be worried. So like today, for instance, I went to the barn and worked my first horse, and I asked basically the barn manager, like, hey, are you guys turning out horses? And she's like, I don't know what we're doing. And I go, don't worry about turning out mine. I lunged her today, and I got her out so she doesn't, I don't feel bad that she's in the stall, but I'm like, I don't want her jumping around. I don't want her injured. And then the other facility, I'm very lucky. My horse gets to stay out overnight if the weather is good. Like, he has his own pasture. He has like a little sun hut is what I would call it. So that's rare in California. Usually they're in the stalls. So he gets out, but I was like, I hope he gets to go in his stall. And so as I went to work him as well, she was like, they're staying in today. And I was like, oh, thank you. So I think it's wonderful to have that option, but I think they should definitely be in and safe. But then I was like worried, like, even in the stall, should he have like a fly mask on? Like, because wind, it's going to get into their eyes. Like, what do you do about that? So these are all new experiences, because it hasn't been this windy ever in all the years I've been here.
Wow. Okay, so final topic, because we're getting there. This is kind of weird, but it actually comes off of another short that you made, Megan. But I'm going to start with Caryn. Weird, or issues with animals, be it bugs, lizards, mammals, reptilian. What issues have you had? Fire ants. What issues have you had, Caryn, in Florida that, like, I don't know. I don't know if they have fire ants, and I feel like that's not a Florida thing. But any issues with coyotes or alligators or?
I won't say there are any issues. There are some coyotes in the area that I'm in, and I hear them at night, and I think they're pretty cool sounding. We have those at home.
Mm-hmm.
the thing that was the oddest to me was the iguanas, because the owner of the place I'm at, there's a big pond on it, and she loves the geese and the ducks, and the iguanas are huge. I bet some of them are probably 5 feet long, and they're big and orange. And
cool.
like late morning, and they sun. And so far this year, there's a hedge all around the outdoor arena. And sometimes they'll crawl up through that to get on the top to sun. And when they're on the top, the horses don't seem to mind. But when they're crawling up through it and the hedges are shaking, they don't really appreciate it. So what I found is, if they're really bad, I'll go out before I ride with the apple picker, and I'll take them into the pond, and that gives me like 40 minutes to get one horse done, and then I'll go back and chase him out. Now my mare doesn't care at all. I take her, and we herd them back into the pond on her, and my gelding's getting braver about that. So I feel like I'm just herding the cats down to the pond with the big iguanas. So that's the only thing. And they're not dangerous. They're not aggressive. But that was a very weird thing to have a lizard that big just hanging out. But
Have you experienced any of them where it gets so cold they're falling out of the trees in the morning?
Oh yes.
Really?
Then there are people who find the poor thing on the road and put it in the car, and that's true. And then they warm up, and then they're like, "Oh my God, there's an iguana in the car." One of my friends, a big one, did fall out of a tree at her place in the pond. She has a pond as well, and she felt so bad for it. So while it was kind of frozen cold, she put it in her tack room, and of course it warmed up. But I think it had really hurt itself falling quite a distance from the tree, so it didn't survive. So yeah, it isn't just a funny story. It really does happen.
Aren't they considered an invasive species? Don't they try to eliminate them because they're ruining the local flora and fauna?
Yes. Terry will never, do anything about him, but I know some neighbors have hired people to shoot them because they overrun everything. They're all over the roads, and
Wow.
I don't care for them.
How about alligators? Any stories?
Sometimes I've gone bike riding along the canals and I'll see them in it, but it's pretty rare. And I've never had one come up on the land or from the ponds and, come into the farms. Usually if there's one that's spotted, the animal control comes and gets them and takes them to another faraway pond, not where there's a lot of residences. So
are there any insects you have to worry about? The fire ants, I think, is more of like a Texas, New Mexico.
When season is really in full forward speed here, there are a lot of flies. They have fly systems. They really do try to keep them down. But you got to have fly masks on, and you almost have to have fly sheet on them because it's really bad. And then in April, when everybody's leaving, they all come to where I am because they don't have any horses on their properties anymore. So they come over. And so because there's such a concentration of horses, you wouldn't understand it, because I didn't until you get here and you see how many horses there are in horse properties. But you have to be careful, because if some farm got some virus, it would spread because everybody's so close, and a breeze will take that fly or that mosquito or whatever to the next farm. But knock on wood, haven't had anything like that, but it could happen.
One more, banana spiders.
Ooh.
Never seen one. No.
Are you kidding me? They're about this big.
Nope. I've seen those little sticker green frogs. They'll hang on my screen, but
no, these are spiders that are about this big.
Oh,
no.
Yeah. You'll have to tell me if you come across one. You will. Sometime you will.
How about you? The scream from here.
Jinxed her.
Oh, yeah. Well, Maybe she'll be lucky. How about you, Megan? What flora and fauna situation is in California that you have to watch out for? Mountain lions?
Where
Coyotes?
I am, nothing. I mean, it's great here. Like, no flies. I have found a dead scorpion in our Airbnb, a baby one. There's little lizards all around the Airbnb, but at the farm, they have, every farm has a gate and fencing and to keep the coyotes out. So in Wisconsin, I never see coyotes on our farm. And then these guys, I feel like they're almost domesticated. I see at least one coyote every day. Some years there was like a band of 3, and every time I drive to the farm, I'd see them cross. They're very bold and cross the road. Trying to think of anything. The biggest thing are the dogs at the farm. Like, I don't have a dog at the farm where I'm at home. But being in training, they have like 6 or 7 dogs. And so my horses aren't used to the dogs, and they will, like, you're doing a line of changes and they'll just run across the line of changes, and you're like, whoa. And they do try to keep them out of the arena, but they're dogs, like they'll, and I think it's great because it's great show practice. Because like at Silverwood, sometimes there's cats that go, so I had told Kathleen this year, I can't wait for Sheila to meet your dogs, like she's very like, oh my God, about everything. And it's a covered arena, so there's going to be a lot of dogs. So basically it's the dog.
So no biting insect situations you got to watch out for?
No,
that's good.
I mean, there are, they have, what are they called? Woodpeckers that are on the trees right outside of the arena, birds, that kind of thing. There are holes in the ground, right? So there are rattlesnakes here. I have yet to see a rattlesnake. And I have always, since I was a little girl coming to California, have been cautioned, if you see a hole in the ground, keep walking, do not investigate. So I've never seen one, but just FYI, be aware there are snakes.
Yeah, that would be a bad day. Huh. Okay. Well, that's fascinating. Well, I don't know that we've covered all the topics, but I think we've covered a lot of the topics. Don't you?
Yeah. I think it was great. Caryn,
this is fun.
So fun to have you
on
Farm Besties.
Oh, thank you. I know it was kind of a last minute thing, but I'm so glad you joined us.
Yeah, I really am glad. Thank you.
Yeah. Fun. And it was almost an hour and 40, like you said, Megan.
I warned you. I warned you.
Well, thanks for I enjoyed it. I'd never done a podcast like this before. So it was fun.
It was a lot.
Well, that's great. Maybe we'll have you back for another one. And Megan wants to for the podcast, right?
Yeah. I have to ask Reese, and hopefully we can twist your arm when you're back in Wisconsin. We can come to your farm.
Yeah,
you have a beautiful farm. Yeah, I've taken some of your ideas, and I love your stalls, and it would be amazing. The stall latches. I just love your farm, so it would be amazing to whatever you want to share with us. We'd love.
Oh, and I will. And you can bet my husband will be there to walk you through everything.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
We need
more the merrier. Yeah. Get the engineer's perspective on things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thanks you guys both so much. Again, Caryn, thank you. I know it was last minute. Really appreciate it. But gosh, so much fun. Especially you guys are one's over here, and I'm in the middle, freezing my butt off. It's 18 degrees Fahrenheit here in southern Wisconsin.
Oh, that's why we're gone. Come and visit, Steffi.
Right.
Yeah. So okay, have a good night. I appreciate it so much. But yeah, we'll talk again. And thank you, everybody. Hit the subscribe button and click the thumbs up, right, Megan?
And thanks for watching and listening and all the questions. We love having all the questions and comments. So thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. So all right, bye everybody. We're gonna end this. Bye all.
Bye.
Okay, we've ended almost. Bye guys.